Particularly those of Love 101 FM.
Hello and welcome to the Morning Watch on Love 101 FM. I'm your host, Dylan Toussaint. A special welcome to our listeners on love101.org. And if you're overseas and on the move, US listeners can access us at 712-832-8001. And if you're in the UK, 0330-332-6541. Or join us via the Love 101 FM app that can be downloaded from the Google Play Store or the Apple Store. You can also join us on Love 101 FM Facebook and YouTube Live. In the first watch today, no jab, no job. Is this a preview of things to come? And in the second watch, who is taking care of our daycares? For our social media question, we ask, what are your thoughts on employers forcing employees to get vaccinated or lose their jobs? Please share your responses on our Facebook page, Love 101 FM, and also on WhatsApp, 876-997-3125, using the hashtag The Morning Watch. We'll share your responses later on in the program, but before all of that, here's I quote.
This morning's I quote, one of the greatest labor-saving inventions of today is tomorrow. Vincent T. Goss.
Okay. Good morning, Shivani.
Good morning, Griff. How are you?
You know, I'm doing well. And you?
Very well, thanks.
Hey, I hear that you have been doing some serious preaching in your devotion.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they don't call you Bishop Shivani Blair.
No, I can't body shot.
We will see, sir. We will see.
No matter with that.
We will see. We will see. I'm not being prophetic.
No. Keep it.
Right. The main watch will be back after this break.
I am a man, yes. Strong man, integrity man. I am a man.
Man and man, are you being abused or are you the abuser? What happens in your mind when you abuse someone, especially those you claim to love? Is the response the same when a woman abuses a man as it is when a man abuses a woman? Can a man who is being abused become abusive? Well, we want to take a closer look at the mental state of our men who are being abused and those who are abusers. So ensure that you do not miss the mailbox this Wednesday, April 21 at 5:30 p.m. inside the program that's designed for men as we take a look at the man abused versus abusive with motivational speaker and psychologist, Dr. Lekim Samaj. That's the mailbox, the program designed for men, hosted by men and with guests who are men. It happens this and every Wednesday with yours truly, Courtney Morrison and Kevin Bailey, here on Love 101, the family station. Monday.
Here is a reminder from Love 101, the family station, as we face the COVID-19 pandemic. Masks are effective only when used in combination with frequent hand cleaning with soap and water or alcohol-based solutions. Wear a mask that is lined with 2 or more layers. When taking it off, ensure you dispose of it properly. I'm Nigel Wilkinson from Love 101, reminding you to protect yourself while protecting others. Stay safe and keep it locked on Love 101, the family station.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. I'm your host, Dylan Toussaint. Well, recently, in an Observer report entitled Job or No Job, that's JAB or no JOB, mention was made of the management of a local firm allegedly issuing a memo to its employees to get vaccinated within a 14-day period. And persons who refused to be vaccinated would be reportedly asked to resign. However, the memo was subsequently withdrawn. The newspaper report further emphasized, and I quote, Jamaican employers are being warned that they could find themselves on the wrong side of the law if they dismiss any employee who refuses to take the COVID jab or COVID vaccine, end of quote. So, what really are the legal implications? And are there instances in which the jab could be justified for employees keeping their jobs? Well, to answer these and other related questions, we have online Senator Lambert Brown, veteran trade unionist, and Mr. Conrad George, litigation attorney at law. Good morning, gentlemen.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning,
Good morning, Conrad. Good morning to the listeners.
Yeah, good to have you both with us this morning. Well, gentlemen, we're talking about employment issues, and as I understand it, the Employment Termination and Redundancy Act is of great significance in this regard. What is your understanding of that act, especially in light of our topic this morning? Begin with you, Senator Brown.
Well, firstly, Rev, the appropriate legislation is the Labor Relations and Industrial Dispute Act of 1975, not the Employment Termination and Redundancy Payment Act, which is of 1974. That 75 Labor Relations and Industrial Dispute Act allowed for the first time in our country for an employee who was being dismissed to have his case of dismissal reviewed by an industrial dispute tribunal. Prior to that, an employer could fire the servant, could fire the employee at will. And nobody could challenge that. Now, with the 75 Labor Relations Industrial Dispute Act and the companion Labor Relations Code of 1976, it says that the employee's job is akin to his property, and the employee is entitled to the job continuity and entitled to the security of job and security of earning. That set of legislation which has been upheld by the Privy Council in terms of what it means, provide a worker with a right to review. So if an employer now says you must take a vaccine, that worker can say, I have religious grounds, I have other grounds, I have health grounds, and challenge any dismissal. So we have to go back to that 75 legislation and 76 code. That's what has changed things in this country from the period when an employer could fire at will.
All right. Mr. George, your take?
Yes, Doctor. As usual, I agree with virtually everything that Lamy says. But as you know, every equation has two sides. And yes, he's completely correct that any employee in Jamaica who is dismissed by their employer has the right to go to the Ministry of Labor and from there to the Industrial Disputes Tribunal if the matter is not resolved. And at the tribunal, the question of whether the dismissal should stand is determined on the question of whether it is justifiable. And that is justifiable in law under the statute, as Lamy correctly says, the LRIDA. Now, justifiable is a term that has very broad meanings, basically fairness and reasonableness. And in order for it to be determined that something has been justifiable, the IDT has to look at all the circumstances of the case. So that is why I said in a recent article in the Gleaner that one size does not fit all. There may well be circumstances where an employee can say, I do not wish to take the vaccination, and that can be entirely reasonable. But equally, it is my view that there are circumstances where it is reasonable for the employer to say, you must take the vaccination, and unreasonable for the employee to say no. Let me illustrate why. On the employer's side of the equation is the fact that every employer in Jamaica owes a duty to all the workers that work for him to provide a safe system of work. It seems to be the medical opinion that the presence of an unvaccinated person in the workplace could increase the risk to other workers in certain circumstances, if they're working closely together, for instance. And in those circumstances, the presence of an unvaccinated worker places on the employer a potential liability to other workers who may be injured by that person being unvaccinated. And there is a similar duty to members of the public. So if, for instance, you're running a care home, or you're running a hospital, or you're running a resort or a restaurant, and your workers are closely working together in the kitchen or closely serving customers in a restaurant, you as the employer are at great risk of liability if you have an unvaccinated person mixing with your other workers and mixing with your customers. So placing an employer in that situation, I would, as a matter of law, contravenes the duty of good faith and fidelity, which is an implied duty in everybody's contract of employment. Every employee, from the managing director down, owes a duty to the employer of good faith and fidelity. And I think, as a matter of law, the courts would hold that failing to take a vaccination in circumstances where you, as an employee, put the employer at risk of liability to other workers is a breach of that duty, and that may justify dismissal. But I emphasize this is not something that applies in every circumstance, and I think it is quite wrong for an employer to issue a blanket instruction that everybody needs to be vaccinated, because it's clear in our law that reasonableness and fairness drives all of these issues, and it cannot be that a tractor driver employed to drive a tractor in the middle of the field in rural Jamaica, and in circumstances where he's not, as a matter of his work, required to interact with anybody, that he should be told, you must be vaccinated or you'll be dismissed, because he's not placing anybody at risk. So, in my final point on this aspect of it, this is not employer against employee. This is a balance of reasonableness in all the circumstances to protect other workers and members of the public, which results in the employer having liability, which the employee should not, as a matter of law, be allowed to inflict upon the employer. So it's a many-faceted issue, and it is not to be looked at from any one standpoint.
I'm almost sure that Senator Brown has a response, but before he does, Mr. George, I just want a clarification. What does the law state? What is the exact terminology? Is it justifiable reason? Or
justifiable. Just justifiable. There are two strands to our...
Actually worded in the law.
Yes. There are two strands to our law. There's a statutory side, which sits on top of the other side, which is the common law contractual side. And under the statute, if the IDT holds that a dismissal is unjustifiable in its award, the IDT can require reinstatement, it can require payment of money, etc., etc. And so the term is unjustifiable or justifiable. It is not defined in our legislation, and so the courts have determined how the word justifiable should be applied. And it's basically fairness, reasonableness, taking into account all the relevant circumstances of the case, which may actually, as a matter of interest, not be entirely based on contract. There may be other reasons outside the contract that justify dismissal, but that's something to be debated.
Tell you what, Mr. George and Senator Brown, hold those thoughts. We're going to be taking a break. We'll be right back.
Jamaica Banana Board, Green Gold, Life Health, and the Environment. The time brought to you by the Jamaica Banana Board is
7:15 on the Family Station, Love 101.
Make I tell you about short-term motor insurance from JNGI. You choose what you need, 30, 60, 90 days policy. No long commitment, full third party. Don't park your car, don't walk, get a shorty. So affordable and it's not per nation market. JNGI shorty. Country party, we have a shorty. Just insure your vehicle and start it. Roll out with a shorty. Shorty, the short-term motor insurance from JN General Insurance. Available only online.
Shake and go with true shake. Shake and go. Grab a true shake and go. When me have to put in the work, but I'm moving slow. Grab a true shake and go. School time and not joke time. Have to study hard, brain full time. Grab a true shake and go. When we up in the gym, we have to stay healthy and fit. Grab a true shake and go. Shake and go with True Shake. Packed with 9 grams of protein, 24 key vitamins and minerals to keep you going. Grab a true shake and go.
Entrepreneurs, now you've got more support in your corner. Introducing Sagicor Bank Business Resource Center, where entrepreneurs benefit from free training in business management, financial support and guidance from pros, as well as research capabilities. Sagicor Bank, in partnership with the Jamaica Business Development Corporation, brings you this first center of its kind for small entrepreneurs to develop and grow. Let's help you take your business to the next level of success. Contact Sagicor Bank Business Resource Center today. WhatsApp 876-997-3745.
Nation, baby. Rain or shine, any weather. When we go bold, we go bircha. Quality paint, no faded colors. When we go bold, we go bircha. Let your imagination run free. Pick a color, any color for the space what you need. When we say it bold, that mean it not be. Quality in every color, 7-year guarantee. When we go bold, we go bircha. Watch your color. When we go bold, we go bircha. Rain or shine, any color you need. When we go bold, we go bircha.
We will. 2 words that show our unwavering determination and dictate our actions. Because at Digicel, we value you like family. So here are our 5 promises to you. We will provide you with the very best LTE and broadband experience. We will be by your side 24/7, responding to your queries within seconds. We will be transparent. None of them hidden charges or tricky terms and conditions, Tindy. We will bring digital experiences you can love with great apps, entertaining content, and affordable data bundles. We will listen to your feedback and reward your loyalty. We will and we must, because together we are so much better. Digicel, better together.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. Thanks for staying with us. I'm your host, Dylan Toussaint, and we are looking at the whole matter of getting vaccinated and in terms of one's job. And we have online Mr. Conrad George, litigation attorney at law, and Senator Lambert Brown, veteran trade unionist. Senator Brown, Mr. George said a lot there. What's your response?
No, Conrad and I are in agreement. What Conrad is saying is that it depends on each case, and it's to be taken on its merit. He spoke about the agricultural worker, and he spoke about somebody in home care, for example. But there are many factors. And Conrad pointed to the contract. And I would say while there's an implied duty of fidelity, we have to look at the express terms of the contract. The key thing to us is that it is reviewable. Any dismissal now is reviewable because of the 1975 legislation, the Labor Relations and Industrial Dispute Act, and the code. Conrad spoke about fairness and reasonableness. That's what comes into section 12.5, where it says that the dismissal should be justified. And it is the duty of the employer to show, and the burden of proof is on the employer to show that the dismissal was justified. So all I'm saying, and I think Conrad will agree with me, the same thing applies in Trinidad, where the president of the industrial court in Trinidad made the same statement. It depends on the contract. It depends on fairness. I've been in a chat with people in the Caribbean, and it's the same approach that has been adopted. And this is not just a Jamaican issue, Rev. It's worldwide, and it depends on what each legislation says. In our case, our legislation is clear. And also, we must bear in mind, the government has not mandated that everybody must be vaccinated. So we have to take that into account. I am pro-vaccine, let me make it clear. But I'm also pro the right of every worker to take a decision as to whether I'll be vaccinated or not. And that's important, because the next thing, if an employer, Conrad, can say to me, I must go on vaccine, what is there to stop that employer from saying to me, in the next election, vote for the Purple Party or the other party? You understand me? It's about the right. It's about the right.
That is different, Mr. George.
Well, I don't think I quite agree with Lamy on the question of an instruction to go vote for the Purple Party, because the reason why, as I tried to emphasize earlier, the reason why an employer may have the right to dismiss a vaccine refusnik is that he, the employer, will be under liability to other workers and members of the public if he doesn't do it. And I'd like to emphasize that in relation to a care home facility. Would you want your aged aunt, uncle, parent, or other relative to be in a care home facility that didn't guarantee to you that there wasn't going to be a raging outbreak of COVID? And these are factors that I think feed into what Lamy is also saying, that it all has to be considered. All the factors have to be considered. It has to be fair in balance and in the round. And taking into account something that Lamy just said about religious grounds and other grounds, that too is relevant. The objections of an employee who says, I do not wish to be vaccinated, are part of the whole reasonableness, fairness, justifiability test. So if the employee is physically, medically not supposed to take the vaccine, or would be at risk if he or she were to do so, then that's a factor that would naturally have to be taken into account. Any rational reason must be taken into account, including religious reasons. And the employer in those circumstances would, I think, be required by the law to see if there was any way around. So if for instance, you're dealing with a server in a restaurant, a waiter or waitress, there may be something else that the waiter or the waitress can do for the continuing period of the pandemic. And that would also be a relevant factor in determining the actions, whether the actions of the employer were reasonable or not. So it's not something that can just be applied across the board. And I would add one more point. We don't know where this is all going to lead. We don't know what the future course of the pandemic is going to be. We don't know. You see, we don't know any of these things. So we can only judge as a matter of law by what is current, and what the current situation is, what the current standards required are, the current medical standards, because legally one can only be expected to apply what is the current best practice. And provided...
Could I just, before you ask, Rev, could I just add one thing? Conrad, also, the procedure leading up to the dismissal is critical. So if you have a good reason to dismiss, and your procedure where you carried out that dismissal could also be found to be unjustified. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree with you more.
Multifaceted approach has to be taken.
Let me ask, what weight would religion play in that process? If somebody, I'm getting back to the example given by Mr. George, in a care facility.
Yes.
And the person is saying no because of religious reasons. I know that you're not judges, but I'm just asking what way.
No, you see, the key point
in such scenario.
Dylan, the key point is what you just said there. We are not judges. We can tell you what we think the applicable principles and concepts are. And it would be up to a judge in given particular circumstances to decide what weight should be given to a religious objection. And again, it would turn out what is reasonable in the circumstances. So I don't think any of us can predict how that would necessarily turn out, because there will be other factors that will be taken into account. But yes, I mean, if somebody has a religious objection, then it's obviously something that have to be listened to. But I would not be so bold as to say that that would be determinative of the issue.
Yeah, but there's some factors, for example, Rev. Let's take it. And to support the religious claim, we could say that that employer could put in a requirement for testing, and the employee agreed to do that test, that COVID test. And if the person is negative, we know, for example, that in workplaces or public places, you go and you do a temperature test. So, in other words, there are other things that can be done to mitigate somebody spreading the COVID virus in the workplace.
But that's not foolproof.
But nothing is foolproof. Nothing is foolproof. But it's just saying that in good faith, you would have had to do this other than just to terminate the employee. And as I'm saying, before 75, you would terminate at will. The 75 legislation is so fundamental that even if you backdate some letters, the process of that dismissal could be found and justified. And so it is for those factors that Conrad and I am saying, each case turns on its merit, including the religious one. In other words, if I'm an Adventist and I say I can't come to work on Saturday, and you then change, and you're employing me, but then you change and say I must come this Saturday. So each factor account, but bear in mind also on the religious side, you have to look at the Charter of Rights. Charter of Rights protect you against religious discrimination. And so that's a big one.
Yes, so I would not be fair to that employee.
That is correct.
Yes. But
there's a difference between somebody saying,
to use a popular term. What do you see happening in the future in regards to this COVID crisis, vaccinations, and industrial relations? Mr. George and then Senator Brown.
I would like to hope that none of these... Sorry, can you not hear me?
Yes, I'm hearing you now. Go ahead.
I would like to hope that none of these things will become issues in any real sense. I know there's a lot of reticence out there, a lot of vaccine skepticism, but many people are saying that they will take the vaccination. They just want to see others walking around for a couple of days or weeks after having taken it before they themselves take it. Mm-hmm. So I'm hoping that the skepticism melds away. And I would also add this, that no employer, regardless of the circumstances, can require somebody to take the vaccination unless, one, the vaccination is available, and two, the employer has facilitated the vaccination process. So I don't think any of this is going to arise until employers are able to arrange for their entire workforce or specific aspect or parts of their workforce to be vaccinated and pay the bill. So, and at that point, it may well be that the vaccination skepticism has declined because there are so many people like Lambert. I mean, Lambert walking around perfectly healthy and strong. Even me walking around perfectly healthy and strong, having taken the vaccination, my first dose. So I'm hopeful that none of this will really come to bump, as they say, and that things will smooth out.
Yeah, the final word, Senator Brown. 1 minute.
A couple months ago, there was a case of a teacher at Mona Secondary with fingerprinting. Mm-hmm. And that was new. You know, do I have to fingerprint to go to work?
Right.
They're going to be evolving these new issues, whether it is COVID, fingerprinting, DNA, data, but there are some foundation that Conrad has mentioned. Reasonableness, fairness. Those are critical in determining if you can justify to terminate somebody. And so I would say I'm not worried about what new may come. There are some foundation that allows to measure.
We have to leave it there.
Here and abroad, yes. And not to mention natural justice.
Yeah. Thank you so very much, Senator Brown and Mr. George. Have a productive day.
You too, sir. All the best. Take care, Rami.
Listeners, the Morning Watch will return in just a moment.
JN Bank Live Online Banking is your quick and easy banking that's safe and secure. Sign up today. Visit jnbank.com. JN Bank will help you find a way. The time is
7:30 and a half, folks. Soon come.
If you're a farmer or a fisher folk, this one's for you. Sagicor AgriCare Plan. With AgriCare Plan, you can get affordable insurance coverage for you and your family. Life insurance, critical illness coverage, and health insurance for as little as $3,900 every 3 months. Visit your nearest RADA or fisheries office or text AgriCare to 876-322-2384 to apply. Farmers and fisher folk, get the insurance coverage your family deserves today with Sagicor AgriCare Plan.
Out of many one people, out of many one juice, out of many real fruit, but there ain't no substitute. We put the best fruit in, pour out enough love in, bring out the sunshine in and the true juice. This is the juice of Jamaica. Every fruit, every drop we get flavor. When you feel the heat, you know say you a be true juice with your neighbor. Out of many one juice, true juice.
You are the buzz, 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 buzz. You are the zing, 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 zing. You are the you are the click, click, click. You are the pop, pop, pop. You are the I in Jamaica. So keep fizzing for the love of it. Pepsi.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. I'm your host, Dylan Toussaint. Let's have a look at the newspapers to see what Jamaicans and others are saying and doing. In the Gleaner, vaccines due for second shots only, says the NHF. And then the CMO warns against SHARP, that's SHARPE, I believe that's in reference to Michael Sharp, vaccine death rumor. And then pastor challenges COVID law as unconstitutional. In the Observer, right on leave, that's WRIGHT, but House still divided on how domestic violence is treated. And then St. Vincent faces another volcano-related hazard as rainy season approaches. And then finally we see here, America breathes. Tears of joy, relief after conviction in Floyd murder case. Some interesting headlines there in our newspapers. Coming up next, we'll read some of the feedback from our Facebook social media questions. What are your thoughts on employers forcing employees to get vaccinated or lose their jobs? Leave a comment on our Facebook page, Love 101 FM Jamaica, or WhatsApp 876-997-3125. We'll be right back.
Bills to pay and funds to transfer? No problem. I do it all on my time with JN Bank Live Online Banking. It's my simple and secure as that online banking.
Phone credit need a top up? No problem. I do it with JN Bank Live Online Banking.
It's quick and easy with just a few clicks. JN Bank Live Online Banking that goes where you go. Sign up today. Visit jnbank.com. JN Bank will help you find a way.
Jamaicans, our brothers and sisters in St. Vincent and the Grenadines have been displaced by recent volcanic eruptions and need our help. The Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development has set up a relief fund to supplement the logistic support being offered by the Jamaican government. Play your part by donating to Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management ODPEM account number 212-387-304 at National Commercial Bank, Oxford Place Branch. That's account number 212-387-304. Account name ODPEM. We are one Caribbean. Let's all lend a helping hand. A message from the Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. I'm your host, Dylan Toussaint. Well, we are going to go straight into the second watch. In a recent Gleaner article entitled Daycare Abuses Being Addressed, the state minister in the Ministry of Education and Youth reportedly announced that recommendations have been put forward to address problems such as corporal punishment and introducing measures to secure more convictions of abusers, end of quote. The fact is, when we leave our children in the care of others, we expect that they will be cared for. What happens when this is not so? Who is taking care of our daycares? Well, to address these and other related issues, we have joining us Mrs. Betty Ann Blaine, founder of Hear the Children Cry. Good morning, Mrs. Blaine.
Hi, good morning, Dr. Toussaint. How are you?
I am
good morning
well.
To your
how are you?
As well, and viewers. I'm fine, thank you. And
Yes.
I hope you're doing well. And
Yes.
To Jamaicans, I want to say, let's all keep ourselves safe, eh? Be very
Right.
vigilant.
Long time I haven't had opportunity to speak to you.
Right. Thank you.
Yes. Right. Now, we're talking about the whole matter of daycares. And
Yes.
as far as you're aware,
Yes.
how prevalent are daycare centers in Jamaica today? And why is that so?
I mean, you're talking the numbers or the prevalence of
Yeah, not the
problem?
numbers necessarily, but,
Okay,
you know.
you're talking.
generally-
Well, listen, it's interesting, this Gleaner story. I think there was more than one recently. Because we hadn't heard much as advocates and watchdogs for children. We have not been hearing any problems really in recent times about any problems with daycare centers. So much so that people like myself had been thinking, well, everything appears to be okay because we do have a monitoring body. We do have a body, the Early Childhood Commission, right, the EEC, responsible for daycare centers. We have the government, CPFSA. We have all these entities with oversight and responsibility for daycare centers.
Yes.
And so I was quite comfortable as an advocate, thinking that everything appears to be okay. I mean, we went through reforms for daycare centers some years ago where anybody wanting to set up a daycare center had to be registered with the Early Childhood Commission. Investigations would have to be done for the physical plant or the place, the daycare center itself. The fire department would have to do their investigations and give approval. The public health department. We have all of these things that we're supposed to do, you know. And so we were comfortable thinking everything was okay. Now, this report is troubling. It's troubling. And I just want to say right up front that, look, we have rules and regulations, we have laws, right? But the government cannot police everybody and everywhere, particularly daycare centers. There are a lot of them, you know. There must be, I suspect, maybe over 500 across Jamaica, and I suspect there are many that are not registered. In other words, somebody just have a little room or a place, and they say, okay, they know that parents have to take their children somewhere when they're going to work, and they say, all right, they're going to just open a little daycare center. I'm sure you have those that are under the radar. They're not registered.
Right.
So it's impossible, really, for the government to police all these daycare centers. You know who have to be the watchdogs? Parents. Parents have to be the police for daycare centers because there are a lot of them. People, especially Dr. Toussaint, during this time of COVID, where everything is under lockdown and behind closed doors. A lot of things are happening behind closed doors. And so parents must know who they're leaving there because daycare centers are for children under 6 years old. You know, some of them are babies. So parents must know who they're leaving their kids with, right? They must monitor. I really hoping people are listening, you know, monitor, parents, monitor your child at these daycare centers or your children. When you go to pick them up and you reach home, make sure you examine them physically. If the child is not able to speak, as I said, some of them are babies. But you know, some can speak. You communicate with your child. Ask them if there's anything, those that can speak, if they're okay, are they happy at the daycare center? Let me tell you this. If anybody is abusing them in a daycare center, you know, the children you will know, you know, parents will know, but you have to pay attention. You have to pay attention and be very vigilant to what is happening to your child. Ask questions if the child can speak, right? Examine them physically. And here is the thing. If your child is crying every single morning to go to the daycare center, something is wrong. Let me just say that. If you're taking your child to the daycare center every day, and the child does not want to go, now listen, they're not good when you're taking them for the first day, you know, the first week, because they're not accustomed to the environment. These are strangers and so on. They will cry, they will resist. But after a day or so, and definitely after a week, they're going to be very comfortable. Usually children are happy to be in a space with other kids and with people who love them. If they persist in crying, they don't want to go, something is wrong. Something is wrong. And I would say to the parents, do not take them back because something is wrong. Now, having said that, Dr. Toussaint, I just want to remind the country that 3 years ago, when Minister Floyd Green was state minister, if you remember, he, in his sectoral debate for 2018-2019, there was this big plan rolled out for daycare centers, you know, across Jamaica. He said, or this was a plan, that the government would establish 2 daycare centers in every constituency at a cost of $520 million, right? That the government would provide the necessary oversight, right? That there would be 126 daycare centers across the length and breadth of Jamaica. This and that a MOU would be signed with the government and the daycare center. All of these, this was his contribution in Parliament 3 years ago. Now, I don't know. I have to tell you the truth. I don't know if what we've done or if we've done anything since this announcement was made, because, you know, we're good at talking, but we're not good at implementing. And so I don't really know, but this is not a new conversation. That's the point I'm making. And so when I listen to the current Minister Morgan, talking about, you know, being concerned about this report of children being molested and abused at certain daycare centers. And he mentions that he's going to look at amendments to the Child Care and Protection Act. Quite frankly, I don't have the patience with the talk. I don't. And I would imagine that I'm hoping that Minister Morgan will do something about this and not just talk about it. Let me just say, Dr. Toussaint, the problem with what's happening with the children of Jamaica, not just in daycare centers, I'm talking generally now. And, you know, it's not a nice picture when you look at the abuse of children. When you look at what happens, Capri just came out with a report of what's happening with children in state care. When you look at the general problems, children being molested, raped, abused, missing children, all these problems related to children.
Tell you what.
Ask yourself, how
Tell you
is
what,
this?
Mrs. Blaine.
We have all the laws on the law books, you know.
Tell you what, Mrs. Blaine. Hold that thought, please. We're going to take a quick break and be right back.
The time by the Ministry of Health and Wellness, Healthy People, Healthy Environment is
7:45.
Jamaica. Our way of life is being affected, but our path to progress is not. Flow has continued to build its network infrastructure to prepare for times like these, to ensure that your connections to everything important are strong and reliable. And if you are a current Flow Home Service customer, upgraded services may be available in your area. Learning from home is smarter, and working from home is stronger than ever. I am Stephen Price, Country Manager of Flow, and this is our commitment. The strength of the Flow network is yours and ready when you need it. Visit your nearest Flow store or discoverflow.co. It is our privilege to serve you.
You are the buzz, 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 buzz. You are the zing, 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 zing. You are the. You are the click, click, click. You are the pop, pop, pop. You are the I in Jamaica. So keep fizzing for the love of it. Pepsi.
Entrepreneurs, now you've got more support in your corner. Introducing Sagicor Bank Business Resource Center, where entrepreneurs benefit from free training in business management, financial support and guidance from pros, as well as research capabilities. Sagicor Bank, in partnership with the Jamaica Business Development Corporation, brings you this first center of its kind for small entrepreneurs to develop and grow. Let's help you take your business to the next level of success. Contact Sagicor Bank Business Resource Center today. WhatsApp 876-997-3745.
Tropical race 4 disease, TR4, is a soil-borne disease that has the potential to wipe out the Jamaican banana and plantain crops. Farmers and visitors must disinfect shoes and tools before entering farms daily. If your banana or plantain crops seem to be wilting, call the Banana Board at 876-922-5490 or 876-922-4327. Jamaica Banana Board, Green Gold, Life Health and the Environment.
Nation, baby.
Rain or shine, any weather. When we go bold, we go virtual. Quality paint, no faded colors. When we go bold, we go virtual. Let your imagination run free. Pick a color, any color for the space what you need. When we say it bold, that mean it not feel. Quality in every color, 7-year guarantee. When we go bold, we go virtual. Watch your color. When we go bold, we go virtual. Rain or shine, any color you need. When we go bold, we go virtual.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. Thanks for staying with us. I'm your host, Dylan Toussaint, and we are discussing the whole matter of daycares. Who's taking care of our daycares? And we have online one of the most passionate voices in regards to children, Mrs. Betty Ann Blaine, founder of Hear the Children Cry. Mrs. Blaine, still there with us?
Yes, Dr. Toussaint. So, yeah, I was saying that our problem, is not that we don't have the laws to protect children. We have a lot of them. What we're not doing is enforcing the laws, and this is really the problem. And so this is why when Minister Morgan says that he's going to be looking at the amendment to the Child Care and Protection Act to deal with daycare centers, I am not, tell you the truth, I'm not comforted by that statement, because when I look, let me tell you the laws we have quickly. We have the Child Care and Protection Act, as you know. We have the Child Care and Protection Children's Homes Regulations Act. We have the Victims Charter. We have the Child Care and Protection Children's Registry Act. We have Trafficking in Persons. We have Child Pornography, Sexual Abuses Act, Cyber Crimes Act. All of these are legislation to protect children, And yet, when you look at the abuse of children across this country and the neglect, You have to ask yourself, how is it we have so many laws and yet the children are so vulnerable? So the problem is not the laws. The problem is enforcing the laws. But I want to make another point about the daycare centers that I think is important. You know, we have a sex offenders registry. I don't know if our listeners know that. It's something we keep talking about every now and again. We do have a sex offenders registry, right? But the sex offenders registry is not open to the general public like it is in other countries.
Yeah.
It is only available, accessible, I should say, to certain groups of persons in Jamaica. Now, those groups of persons, like police officers, like it would be, for example, people in education, educational institutions. I'm not even sure it's accessible to churches. I'm not sure, but it should be, because churches operate. You know, you have anywhere where you have a lot of children, and churches have children, right? I'm not talking now in this time of COVID, right? So the point I'm making here is that the sex offenders registry should be available to daycare centers, to the Early Childhood Commission. Should be one of those groups, and I don't know if it is. I'm just saying this. I'm making this recommendation that the sex offenders registry should be available to the people who run the daycare centers. In other words, the Early Childhood Commission. Because you must know who are the people you're hiring to look after children. That's the whole point of the sex offenders registry, you know. Particularly for any place like schools and daycare centers, children's homes, any place where you have children and you have to employ people to work with children. They must have access to the sex offenders registry. These would be persons who have been convicted of crimes against children, right? And adults as well for the registry. And you would have to know who they are. They've served their time and they've been released, but you must know who they are. And this is how you protect the kids, especially if they're pedophiles. Because you know that pedophilia cannot be cured. It's not something that can be cured. Because you cannot cure a pedophile with any medicine, any drugs. You can't cure a pedophile. You have to protect the children. And so this is why in other countries, the sex offenders registry is open to the public as well.
1 minute, Mrs. Blaine, you mentioned earlier about the role, responsibilities
of parents,
and I'm adding guardians as well, right?
Right.
What should a parent or guardian look for in deciding on a daycare center?
Well, listen, I don't remember now that I'm not the expert on daycare centers, right? I'm, as you probably know. But the people responsible is the Early Childhood Commission. And so the parent and guardian, you're asking me the question, what should they do? They should get in touch with the Early Childhood Commission, which has the responsibility for daycare centers. And anybody operating a daycare center must be registered with the Early Childhood Commission for it to operate legally in Jamaica. If you have not done that, you're operating illegally. And so parents and guardians must ask that question of the daycare center where they're taking their child or children. Have you this is what they should ask. Are you registered with the government? Are you registered with the Early Childhood Commission? Because if they're not registered, that means they're operating illegally. And that's crucial, you know.
The abuses that have been highlighted in the media so far seem to focus on corporal punishment. What are your views in that?
Well, I'm not a supporter of corporal punishment at all, and especially in our schools. And I don't even understand this, because corporal punishment was outlawed, made illegal in daycare, in early childhood institutions.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
That's already done, you know.
Yeah.
So corporal punishment is illegal in early childhood institutions, meaning daycare centers.
That is true.
So that's without any argument right now. Where it has not been banned is in high schools I'm not even sure if it's been banned in our primary schools, probably. Not 100% sure. But I know for certain that it's illegal in early childhood institutions. So that shouldn't happen at all. And just to ask me personally as a parent, well, my children are adults. I now have grandchildren. But I don't believe in it. I don't believe there's so much violence in this society already that I don't believe in beating children. I don't. I raise my 2 daughters without having to put a hand on my children.
Somebody listening would quote scriptures in Proverbs.
Yeah, listen.
He who spares a rod hates his son.
Right.
He who
train
loves
up the child in the way he should go.
Do not withhold discipline from a child. If you punish him with a rod, he will not die.
There's one thing but Dr. Toussaint, you can discipline your child, but you cannot murder them because we call it murderation. And what we call home training is murderation.
If you beat them, that's murder?
No. I'm just saying Jamaicans refer to it as murderation.
Mm-hmm.
Murderation is when you physically abuse a child that way. That's not discipline.
Proverbs says if you punish him with a rod, he will not die.
Pardon?
Proverbs 23 verse 13 says if you punish him with a rod, he will not die.
Well, listen. So people can quote anything. You know what I don't like about how people treat with the scriptures? They pick out what suits them.
Right.
Then what about what Jesus said about harming a child? How about that? What did Jesus say when you harm a child? What would happen to you, Dr. Toussaint? It is
better for a millstone to be hung around your neck.
To be placed around your neck and you and you drown in the depths of the sea. That's a quote I'd like to see. Because people like to pick out what suits them. So they're picking out, and look here, no part of the Bible say you must beat a child to death or physically abuse a child that way. They're talking about simply disciplining your child, which is important, as a parent. But the discipline does not have to come with physical abuse. As I told you before, I raised 2 children, 2 daughters. I never laid my hands on my children because from they were born and they were little kids, I taught them about respect, how to listen, how to obey, and there are ways of disciplining your child that requires you don't have to look away. If you have a little child, a toddler, you see, and they like to play with a certain toy, and you take that toy from them as a part of the discipline, you say you can't get it. The children begin to comply. They begin to learn obedience. Yeah. So there are all kinds of ways. I don't have enough time on your show to talk about it. People can Google this. This is the age of technology and information. Parents can go online and look at what are the ways to discipline your child without having to physically beat them.
Right. As you mentioned, time, Mrs. Blaine, we're winding out now. What are some of the things, though, that you look for? I mean, you mentioned about the child being unhappy.
Yes.
And not having a desire to return to the center. Is there anything else that the parent guardian could look for?
Well, that's the main thing, it would seem to me. Because if the child is being abused at the center, you will know, because the child is not going to want to go back. They're going to resist going back and they'll cry. So that's a huge, huge sign.
Are there any questions that you could ask?
The other signs would be that you would check physically the child's body to see if there are any bruises, right? If there are any scratches, anything like that might tell you that the child is being abused at the center. But here is the thing. You see, these daycare centers, just like everything else with your children, you must know the center. You must make sure they're registered, the daycare center. And you must know the people who run the center or centers, that they should have a good track record. In other words, you don't just take up your child. The center should be recommended by a friend, somebody you can trust.
Do your homework.
And here is what Minister Morgan needs to do. Instead of telling us that they're going to look at amendments to the law because, tell you the truth, we have all these laws, we're not enforcing them. What the minister should say is, look, we're going to put out a list on TV, run it as a public education campaign of how you can call up to see which center is registered. How about that?
Well,
give us
that's
the
not good.
name and give us phone numbers so that
Yeah.
parents can get phone numbers and maybe a contact name to call to
Mrs.
find
Blaine.
out if my daycare center is registered.
That's a good note on which to end. We are totally out of time.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us this morning. Have a
You're
productive
welcome,
day.
Dr. Toussaint, and thank you. And thanks to I want to say to your listeners and people watching you by video, take good care of yourselves.
Thank
Keep
you.
yourself safe and protect the children.
Thank you,
Dr.
Mrs. Blaine.
Toussaint.
Bless you.
Okay, bless you too.
Yes, thank you, listeners, for being with us. Join us again tomorrow as we continue to set the stage for a discussion of topical and controversial issues. For information on how to get copies of this program, call our production department at 876-968-959-627. This has been The Morning Watch. Thanks to our producer, Miss Kathy Gale, and our guests. I'm Dylan Toussaint, and you're back to Love in the Morning with Siobhan Evelyn.
You're tuned to Love 101, the family station approaching 8:01, and it's time for the program Forward in Faith, brought to you by the